The story begins in a misty forest in China, known as the Forbidden Valley, a place surrounded by tall mountains and filled with ancient legends. Mao Shang and his father are there, hunting wild boars, moving cautiously as they study every part of the terrain. Suddenly, they notice something moving among the trees. Unsure if it's a person or a wild animal, they call out, but no answer comes back. "Hello, Nacho here, and welcome back again. Let's dive into this adventure." Mao Shang, feeling tense, decides to shoot an arrow, but quickly regrets it as a deep angry roar shakes the forest. A creature charges at them with speed. They sprint in fear, becoming separated in the chaos. Mao Shang jumps off a cliff, landing in a rushing stream below. His father rushes to help him as the creature's roars grow louder, echoing through the valley. Meanwhile, in another part of China, a young boy named Jiyu plays in his room. His father, Hubo, a businessman, interviews English teachers for him, but Jiyu insists he doesn't need one. Lessons and accuses his father of only wanting a babysitter so that he doesn't have to take care of him. The last candidate is Denise Nichols. Talking to Hubo, she makes a subtle comment about him being loaded. Since he doesn't understand the expression, she takes the opportunity to adjust her tone and simply says that the house is beautiful. Jiyu is sneaking down the stairs, trying to listen in on the adults' conversation. Denise wants to know why this job has to be full-time since English lessons don't take more than a few hours a day. Moreover, the teacher who is hired will have to live with the family, which also seems excessive. Hubo tells her that his wife passed away a year ago. Since then, it has been very difficult for the family to recover. He thinks his son needs continuous attention, as well as practice with the language. So, he calls Jiyu to come meet the teacher. The boy tries to speak to her in English, but his sentences are broken and hard to understand. Denise begins to think the job will be tough. The boy retreats as soon as he can and slams his bedroom door. The father complains about his manners, but Denise says it's no problem. Then, Hubo explains that he is about to take on a new position in another city, but still has to resolve some pending business before the move. He wants Denise to take the boy and help him settle into the new school and house. He promises to join them as soon as possible. Denise is a little nervous about the situation, especially when she learns that she will start tomorrow. But she ends up accepting the job, much to Jiyu's displeasure, who is still eavesdropping. Meanwhile, the hunter Duke Darwin is making another one of his illegal transactions in Chinese territory. His team obtains pelts, horns, and a series of other items through predatory hunting. Duke always finds a buyer willing to pay without asking too many questions. Now he's ready for a bolder move. He offers to hunt the famous Yeren, a legendary primate from the valley between the mountains. The client bursts out laughing upon hearing this. He says the Yeren is like Bigfoot or the abominable snowman, nothing more than an old myth passed down through generations, probably to discourage rival hunters. Duke insists that there is enough evidence in the region's caves. Now it's not just farmers and fishermen reporting the numerous incidents, but also scientists and researchers. Duke shows a tuft of reddish fur that was found in a bear trap. Even the client admits that it didn't come from a bear. Still trying to excite him, Duke says it doesn't resemble anything he's seen in his life. Suddenly convinced, the man agrees to pay $2 million for the Yeren, but insists that it be captured alive. The next day, Denise is at the airport with Jiyu. The boy's behavior is even worse than yesterday, and he hardly takes his eyes off his phone. Boarding the jet, she tries to make conversation with him and asks if he's ever flown before. He says he plays many video games that involve flight simulation, which, to him, is the same thing. Denise disagrees with a laugh as the other passengers begin to board the aircraft. Among them are energy consultant Joshua Ridley and his partner Pao Jimin. Joshua seems very interested in Denise, and she does her best to show indifference. It ends up falling to Jiyu, who has to grab the grammar book to study English even during the flight. At the same time, in a rural area near the valley, Mao Shang is being interrogated about his encounter with the Yeren. Officer Chen asks about the arrow, but Mao Shang says he doesn't remember that part. His father tries to contain Chen's irritation and confesses that he took his son to hunt wild boars that day. For this reason, they were armed with arrows and crossbows. On the plane, Denise continues trying to gain the trust of her young student. When she asks about the necklace around his neck, the boy responds rudely and says it's none of her business. But soon after, he decides to explain that the necklace belonged to his mother. He doesn't like to talk about it because other kids make fun of the accessory and say it's for girls. Denise tells him that those kids don't know anything and that their opinion doesn't matter. Jiyu seems to feel better with her support. He starts speaking at a newspaper that the man next to him is reading. The headline says that a pair of hunters spotted the mythical Yeren. Noticing the boy's interest, the elderly man lends him the newspaper. Denise takes the opportunity to mention that at this very moment, they are flying over one of the most mysterious regions in China. Although no one asked for Joshua's opinion, he interrupts the conversation to say that the forest holds no mysteries, only business opportunities. Irritated, Denise responds that the area is home to many endangered species. Businessmen like him shouldn't be allowed to exploit such a place. Joshua retorts that, unlike big companies, those animals don't create jobs. Ji is looking out the window with curiosity, and the old man starts telling him a story. He says his name is Foam. He grew up in a village very close to the Forbidden Valley's borders. During his childhood, he heard many reports about the Yeren until one day, he had an unforgettable experience himself. But when Ji asks what he saw, Foam says he's too old now and his memory is weak. Joshua starts laughing at the superstitious old man, but the laughter soon stops when the plane begins to shake. They're going through a storm, and the turbulence is getting worse. Joshua tries to pretend he's calm, but even his partner is panicking. When flames appear in the turbine outside the window, there's no denying that things are out of control. The plane crashes right in the middle of the forest. The crash is severe, and the jet is destroyed, but the passengers survive. Joshua leaves Jiyu at the base of a tree to put out the fire that started in the wreckage. No one notices when a creature approaches him. When Denise and Foam manage to get out of the plane, they realize the boy is missing. Furious, Denise goes to look for him. Joshua is still trying to downplay the situation. He says they should just call a rescue helicopter and leave the search to the rescue team. Only then does he realize his phone has no signal. After all, they are surrounded by colossal mountains. As soon as Pao regains consciousness, he starts looting the plane before the other passengers get the same idea. Denise is horrified when she finds one of the boy's sneakers. News of the crash reaches Hubo's factory. He is waiting for Denise's call to say his son arrived safely, but only now does he realize she should have called over an hour ago. At this moment, the boy is waking up in a cave. Someone tended to his injured knee, but that person is no longer around. Jiyu decides to find the exit and ends up bumping into Denise. Meanwhile, Joshua is in the densest part of the forest, calling out for her. But instead of a female voice, the response comes in a frightening growl. Fleeing the danger, Joshua ends up in the same cave. Denise and Jiyu are trying to leave but are startled by animalistic noises and a massive shadow that suddenly rises. The two hide, but that doesn't stop a bear from attacking them. However, an enormous reddish-furred primate emerges to defend them. It's the famous Yeren. After the bear is defeated, Denise tries to get the boy out of there. The Yeren doesn't attack them, but it doesn't let them pass either. So Joshua sneaks up behind it with a tree branch and strikes its back. The primate lets out a roar of pain and stumbles away. Watching all this, the boy feels sorry for the Yeren. He follows it and helps remove the branch still stuck in its back. Before the beast can express its gratitude in any way, Denise's shouts for the boy reach them, and the Yeren flees in fear. Meanwhile, not far away, Duke Darwin and his henchmen are paying a visit to Ma Shang. They introduce themselves as scientists and say Shang made an incredible discovery. Proud, the young man invites them for tea. His father, on the other hand, seems suspicious of the foreigners. He says it was just a bear with a toothache. Shang immediately contradicts him, explaining that his father doesn't see well. He insists it was indeed the Yeren. Duke listens, fascinated, as the young man describes the legendary creature. Shang's story diverges from the facts in some parts. He denies having shot the arrow and says he jumped into the river to save his father, not the other way around, but all Duke wants from him is a route on the map. When Shang points to the Forbidden Valley, his father interrupts the meeting and asks the foreigners to leave. Duke says he's willing to pay well for the information, but Shang's father doesn't want any dirty money. The hunter then pretends to accept the decision. Walking very slowly, he tells his friend to count to 3 and guarantees that Shang will come running. That's exactly what happens. The young man agrees to meet them by the river the next morning and promises to guide them to the Yeren. It's almost nightfall in the Forbidden Valley, and the survivors are making a fire. Denise is intrigued by the bandage on Jiyu's knee, and Joshua gets irritated by it. He thinks it's ridiculous that anyone would believe a wild animal could have such nursing skills. The boy says it's not an animal. But when Joshua asks if it's human, he says it's not that either. Foam then explains that the Yeren is a hybrid being. This is the only common point in all the reports and legends. Some stories describe it as a fragile and foolish monster, while others say it's the protector of the valley, endowed with great cunning. Joshua loses patience with so much mysticism, claiming that there is no monkey smarter than humans and, therefore, they need to clean the boy's knee and apply antibiotics immediately. No one seems to support him, but he still calls for Piao and asks him to bring the first aid kit. Only then does the group realize that Piao is not with them. Checking the plane's wreckage, they discover that he stole everything that could be useful, including all the food. What they don't know is that Piao is about to receive his just punishment. His encounter with the Aaron doesn't go well for him, and his screams are heard by Denise and Joshua. When night falls, Ji-yu asks Filme where he was traveling to. He explains that he was returning to the village where he grew up to take his wife's ashes, following her last wish. In the middle of the night, Ji-yu wakes up to the sounds of the forest and decides to leave the cabin. Denise also gets up, noticing the boy's absence, and is startled to see him trying to talk to the Aaron. Then Joshua appears with a torch and scares the creature away. Ji-yu gets angry and says that the Aaron never harmed him at any time. Denise is forced to agree that so far, the creature seems to be protecting the child. Joshua is very upset with the survivor's general ingratitude toward his efforts. The next morning, Shang goes to the agreed location and waits for his new friends. They arrive late and out of breath, suffering from the altitude that doesn't affect the locals. For this reason, Duke tells Shang that he will lead the expedition to the Aaron's lair. At the crash site, Joshua wakes up to the sound of turbines and runs outside. A plane is flying over the valley. Denise joins Joshua, and they start shouting and waving, but it's all in vain. The aircraft flies away, and the two start arguing again. Joshua wants to stay close to the wreckage until rescue comes to save them, while Denise wants to follow the river to get out of the valley. Filme is too weak to choose, and Ji-yu votes for the teacher's idea. So, the group prepares for the journey, unaware that the gang of hunters is following the same river in the opposite direction. Duke has an unfortunate encounter with an albino salamander and nearly loses a hand. As the afternoon progresses, Filme feels too weak to continue. The group decides to camp there until the next day. While looking for branches to support the shelter, Joshua sees the Aaron trying to hide in the woods. He then returns and tells Denise that they are being followed. Ji-yu says that it must be trying to protect them, but Joshua still can't believe that version. Meanwhile, Hubo is furious with the delay in the rescue. Officer Chen tells him that the searches have been unsuccessful. He regrets to inform him that there is little chance of finding survivors. But as the two are leaving, Mao Shang's father arrives, desperate. He explains that his son ran off to help a suspicious group. Chen already knows Duke Darwin's crew and realizes they must be the ones. Hubo notices that they are talking about the same place where the plane crashed and insists on joining them on the adventure. Chen looks him up and down with disdain but can't stop him from trying. Meanwhile, in the valley, Ji-yu hears something moving nearby. Thinking it's the Aaron, he wanders away from the camp. The boy is then attacked and chased by a wild boar, which ends up being shot by Duke Darwin. This is how the two groups finally meet. Joshua is disappointed to find out they are not a rescue team but is soon charmed by Duke and his entrepreneurial spirit. The gang is still pretending to be a group of scientists, and the only one who seems suspicious of this facade is Denise. When Ji-yu starts to talk about what happened in the cave, she interrupts him before he mentions the Aaron. Duke suspects her behavior and realizes that the survivors are hiding something very strange. He takes Ji-yu for a walk and asks if he has seen any bizarre animals around. By this point, the boy is also wary but becomes nervous and can't maintain the lie. He tries to defend his friend by saying that he protects him, but this only helps the villain. Now Duke knows how to lure his prey. While Duke uses the boy as bait, Joshua and Denise are trying to refuse the wild boar barbecue as politely as possible. Mocking the Westerner's fussiness, the criminals talk in Chinese, unaware that Joshua understands the language. One of them says that the couple should enjoy the meal better, as it will be their last. When the interpreter steps away, Joshua begins to speak in English. He asks Denise to laugh at everything he says so the Chinese won't suspect anything. Then he explains what he heard and tells her that these men plan to get rid of them soon. The two begin to laugh, petrified with fear. At the same time, Filme decides to investigate these scientists further and opens one of the cases, which contains a series of tranquilizer injections. Outraged, he tries to confront the villain but ends up losing consciousness. Duke tells the boy that Filme needs medical attention, and the sooner they capture the Aaron, the faster they can return to the city and save the old man. Back at the camp, the laughs aren't working anymore. Joshua tries to overpower the bandits, but he and Denise are quickly subdued. When night falls, the two are tied to a tree along with Ma Shang. The teacher tells the men they don't know what kind of creature they're dealing with, but they seem to have complete confidence in their military gear. Duke is still dragging the boy through the woods, trying to provoke his protector. Finally, he hears the characteristic growl of his prey. He calls the others to help with the capture, and Ji-yu takes the opportunity to escape. He then finds the Yeren and tries to warn him, but the creature doesn't want to leave the boy at the mercy of the bandits. He hides Ji-yu behind the bushes and returns to where he was. Then, the roles reverse, and the henchmen become the hunted, one by one. When it's the leader's turn, Duke hits the Yeren with an injection. The tranquilizer doesn't knock him down, but he gives up the attack. Weakened, the primate returns to the camp, where Denise and Joshua are still tied up. Fong is recovering from his fate and hears the painful grunts. He becomes emotional at the reunion, decades after seeing the mythical creature for the first time. But he doesn't see the Duke is hiding right behind them. Ji-yu arrives screaming but can't stop the villain from hitting the Yeren again. The boy despairs at seeing his friend fall. Fong is also on his last legs and can only say that he discovered the truth. The Yeren really is the protector of the forest, not an irrational monster. Duke is unfazed by the boy's accusing look when Fong finally succumbs. The funeral is improvised the next day. Ji-yu leaves his mother's necklace as a farewell gift. Denise and Joshua try to cover the body with branches while Duke rudely rushes them. He can't wait to leave the valley and collect his money. The Yeren is tied up and still under the effect of the tranquilizer. Denise tries to convince Duke to spare him, saying that the valley is his natural habitat, and he might not survive outside it. Unfortunately, it's clear that Duke doesn't care at all about the Yeren's well-being and just orders Denise to be quiet. Joshua then resumes his natural negotiator attitude. Betraying the trust of his friends, he tries to join the gang, saying he can arrange a buyer. Laughing at him, the hunters explain that the Yeren is already sold for $2 million. Joshua's reaction leaves them intrigued. He doesn't seem to think the amount is that impressive. Duke gives in to curiosity and lets Joshua pitch his proposal. He says he knows a tycoon who's opening a zoo in Macau. This man is looking for exotic animals for display. Joshua says he can get about $20 million for an attraction like the Yeren. Denise is outraged by the negotiation, but by this point, the vultures are already discussing percentages. Shortly after, the trek begins up the arduous climb. Duke makes a stop to question Mao Shang's route. He thinks the journey is taking too long and that they should take a shortcut. Shang explains that it's dangerous to go that way and they could get lost. Even Duke's friend agrees with Shang, but the leader doesn't listen to anyone. While they argue, Denise discreetly helps the boy untie the Yeren. The walk resumes, and they soon reach the mountain's peak. Officer Chen is with Hu Bo and Mao Shang's father at the newly abandoned camp. The forensic team quickly tracks the group's movements, and the police soon catch up to them and observe from a distance. Duke gives Joshua a phone to call his millionaire friend, ensuring the sale as soon as possible. Joshua dials a number and starts talking excitedly about the zoo and the Yeren's capture. Then Duke interrupts him, very angry. The phone doesn't work. It was just a trap, and Joshua fell for it, revealing that he was never really on the side of the bandits. Fearing for Joshua's safety, Chen fires a shot in the air at that moment. Chaos ensues, and everyone starts attacking each other. The Yeren breaks free and charges at his captors. Regretting his choices, Mao Shang helps the survivors escape the danger. Now that the situation is critical, Shen leaves a policewoman to care for Hu Bo while the more capable ones go into battle. But the businessman refuses to stay there and goes in search of his son. The boy hears his father's voice and also leaves the hiding place but ends up being captured by Duke. Seeing Joshua approaching, Hu Bo pretends to negotiate with the enemy while his backup repeats the strategy of attacking the target from behind. The two fight, and Hu Bo takes Duke's weapon, who then flees. His fate is no longer in the hands of the police but in the paws of the Yeren, who starts throwing rocks in his direction. Ji-yu hears his friends growl and runs again, to the despair of all the adults. Cornered at the cliff's edge, Duke begs the Yeren to show his human side and have mercy. But, as Fong had said before, the Yeren is too intelligent to fall for that. He throws Duke into the abyss, thus sealing the man's fate. Then he bids a fond farewell to his young friend before heading into the forest, where he disappears from Ji-yu's sight. Thanks for watching Nacho Movie Recaps. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe for more quick movie breakdowns, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned and keep it cheesy. See you next time.